It's on the front page of every newspaper, every day. The US demands answers. Russia defends its borders. China responds with force. We hear it on the news. We see it in headlines. And we repeat it in our conversations. But have you ever stopped to ask, who exactly is Russia? Who is the US? They are not people. They don't have heartbeat or breath or the mind to decide or demand or respond. And yet, in every corner of the world, we speak of them as if they are human beings. The media, political leaders, and even we ourselves participate in this illusion. Nations become actors, protagonists in the grand narrative of global politics. But why? Why do we think of them as if they are alive? It's not just language. It's deeper than that. As we have seen in the previous episodes, this tendency to anthropomorphize the state, to treat it like a human being with desires, fears, and ambitions, has roots that stretch far back in time. In this episode, we step back in time to the world that nurtured the birth of the nation state. It's a world shaped by many forces, but at its heart lies one profound influence: the human form. Some eras in history redefine not just the trajectory of human progress, but the very way we understand our place in the world. The Renaissance was one such moment. It was a truly exceptional period in history, one that continues to captivate our imagination. What makes this era so fascinating is not just its artistic and intellectual achievements, but the dramatic shift in worldview it ushered in. Ernst Gombrich, the renowned art historian, in his book The Story of Art, states that the Renaissance was not merely a period of rebirth, but a revolutionary moment where the very conception of man's place in the universe was altered forever. The Renaissance signaled a radical departure from the dominant worldview of the preceding medieval era. In this earlier period, life and thought were defined by a theocentric framework, where human existence was understood in terms of divine purpose and religious authority. Theological precepts dictated not only individual morality, but also political and social organization. This theocentric worldview, which centered on God's omnipotence and the promise of salvation through faith, held sway over European society for centuries. However, by the end of the 15th century, the intellectual currents of the Renaissance began to dismantle this framework, giving rise to a new anthropocentric perspective that redefined human potential and agency. In the medieval period, the theocentric worldview dominated both thought and culture. Human existence was regarded as a fleeting moment in a divinely ordered universe, with every aspect of life subject to divine will. The Church played an integral role in shaping the understanding of human life, offering a moral and metaphysical framework that subordinated the individual to the overarching plan of God. Within this framework, the individual's primary purpose was to seek salvation in the afterlife. The medieval worldview was overwhelmingly theological, with human beings seen not as independent agents, but as part of a divinely ordered cosmos. The legacy of this view was evident in the arts and intellectual thought of the period. Art, primarily religious in nature, was used as a means of glorifying divine power, and the human form was often depicted symbolically, with little focus on individuality or the complexities of human experience. Philosophical and theological discourse from thinkers such as Augustine and Aquinas emphasized the limited capacity of human reason, asserting that divine authority should guide human life. These intellectual frameworks not only reinforced the subordination of the human to the divine, but also placed significant constraints on human intellectual and artistic expression. In a world dominated by the celestial and the divine, where art served as a vessel to glorify God and philosophy upheld the supremacy of divine authority, humanism emerged as a fearless revolutionary. The intellectual movement of humanism emerged during the Renaissance as a direct challenge to the theocentric framework. Humanism, a revival of interest in the classical texts of ancient Greece and Rome, encouraged a shift away from the religious and theological concerns that had dominated the medieval period. Humanists advocated for the study of the humanities, rhetoric, history, poetry, and philosophy, focusing on human achievement, potential, and reason. Classical philosophers such as Plato, Aristotle, and Cicero became central to Renaissance education. Their emphasis on human agency and rationality, providing the intellectual foundation for a more secular view of the world. The rise of humanism brought with it a new emphasis on the individual and the cultivation of personal virtue through education. Rather than focusing on divine revelation or religious doctrine, humanists sought to understand the world through human experience and reason, asserting that the study of classical texts could help individuals realize their full potential. The intellectual shift embodied in humanism encouraged a more secular and anthropocentric understanding of the world, one that celebrated the power of human intellect and creativity. Perhaps the most visible manifestation of this intellectual shift can be seen in the transformation of art during the Renaissance. Art became a medium not only for religious expression, but also for the exploration of human potential and the complexities of the human experience. Artists such as Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael began to place a renewed emphasis on the human form as an object of study and representation. This shift was deeply connected to the growing humanist focus on dignity and potential of the individual. Leonardo da Vinci's anatomical studies, which sought to capture the intricate details of the human body, exemplified the Renaissance commitment to understanding the human form in its natural state. His famous drawing, The Vitruvian Man, symbolized the connection between human proportions and the harmony of the natural world. Likewise, Michelangelo's sculptures, such as the David, highlighted the idealized human body as a symbol of human strength, beauty, and intellectual achievement. These works were not merely religious representations, but reflections of the human experience itself, illustrating the Renaissance belief that human beings were capable of extraordinary things, both physically and intellectually. The Renaissance also fostered a growing sense of individualism, with the self becoming the central object of inquiry and expression. Whereas the medieval period had emphasized the collective identity of the community and the church, the Renaissance encouraged individuals to see themselves as autonomous agents with the ability to shape their own lives and contribute to broader societal progress. The idea of the self-made person free from divine determinism began to gain prominence. Figures such as Niccolò Machiavelli, Galileo Galilei, and William Shakespeare embodied this new ideal of individual agency. Machiavelli, in his political treatise, The Prince, emphasized the role of human rulers in shaping the course of history through calculated action and pragmatism, rather than relying on divine will. Galileo, in his scientific endeavors, challenged established religious doctrine by advocating for empirical observation and human reason as tools to understand the natural world. In the realm of literature, Shakespeare's plays depicted individuals grappling with complex emotions, moral dilemmas, and personal desires, revealing the multifaceted nature of human identity. This burgeoning sense of individualism, rooted in the Renaissance embrace of human potential, laid the groundwork for later developments in Western philosophy and political theory, particularly in the Enlightenment and the subsequent development of modern democratic ideals. Fascination with discrete, self-contained forms had profound political consequences. If the human being was a self-contained individual, why not extend this logic to political communities? Just as bodies were seen as bounded, autonomous systems, so too were states. The idea of the state as a body politic became more than a metaphor. It became a blueprint. The human body became the template for a new kind of political order. In Leviathan, Hobbes famously wrote, "For by art is created that great Leviathan called a commonwealth or state, in Latin civitas, which is but an artificial man." This powerful image portrays the state as a giant human figure meticulously constructed by human ingenuity. Its head, the sovereign, embodies reason and authority, while its body, the people, represents the collective strength and unity of society. Just as the human body relies on its organs functioning in harmony under the guidance of the brain, so too must a state achieve unity through centralized control. Hobbes' metaphor underscores the Renaissance belief in the correspondence between microcosm and macrocosm. The idea that the structure of the human body reflects universal order. By describing the state as an artificial man, Hobbes not only borrowed from the Renaissance reverence for human anatomy, but also emphasized the deliberate, constructed nature of political authority. The state, like a mechanical replica of the human body, exists not naturally, but as a product of human design and necessity. This obsession with form, particularly human form, reveals a profound shift in how the Renaissance viewed the world. The human body became the archetype for understanding not just nature, but the very structure of society and governance. As artists and thinkers sought to capture the essence of human harmony and order, they also sought to apply these principles to the broader world, forging a vision of political and social organization rooted in the same balance, unity, and proportion found in the human form. This intellectual transformation laid the groundwork for the modern state's conception, shaping it into a self-contained entity, much like the human body it sought to emulate. The fascination with the human form as a model for political order marked a seismic intellectual shift. But it also raises questions about the limitations of this analogy. Is the human body truly the ideal template for governance? The body is finite, bounded, and inherently individual, a far cry from the complexities of human society, which often spills over borders, resists containment, and defies singular definitions. By tying the idea of the state to the human form, did we create a system that prioritizes rigid boundaries and centralized control at the expense of adaptability, inclusion, and interconnectedness? By shaping the state in the image of the human body, have we limited its capacity to evolve beyond the constraints of individuality and self-containment? Is the very notion of sovereignty derived from this bodily metaphor an outdated concept in an age where economies, Ecosystems and even identities transcend borders. Does the human form, for all its balance and proportion, fail to capture the dynamic essence of collective existence? Could it be that this obsession with the human form has anchored us to a vision of governance that values unity over diversity, order over adaptability, and containment over collaboration? And if so, what alternative forms, if any, might better reflect the complexities of our interconnected world? In this episode, we explored how the human form, with its symmetry, unity, and self-containment, influenced the foundations of the nation-state. Yet, the story of our obsessions goes beyond this. In the next episode, we will shift to a new paradigm where the mechanical and the machine became another quiet force shaping the nation-state, much like the human form before it. We'll uncover how this obsession too quietly influenced the modern world in ways we may not yet fully understand.